Hello, welcome to May 2024. My name is Lynette, and I am reading from the Love Exquisite Magazine, which you can access for free at loveexquisitellc.com. You can also subscribe to the Love Exquisite LLC YouTube channel as well as the magazine. Again, free. It's free. Doesn't cost anything for you to support, like, and love, and spread these articles that I read each month. Unedited, but still the message is still the message. So I'm reading in the For the Love of Relationships section. I'm reading the article titled Different Perspective. Stay focused on the word, not on me, because things are happening. So anyway, I want to take the time out to not forget to say happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers out there, all of the wonderful mothers out there, especially my own mother. Happy Mother's Day to my second mothers. Happy Mother's Day. You know who you are. Happy Mother's Day. Just happy Mother's Day to all the wonderful mothers. Happy birthday to all my fellow Taurians. Woo woo. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. This is my birthday month. And I do accept gifts, so anyway, I'm silly, y'all. Y'all should know this by now. So I'm reading in the For the Love of Relationships section of the Love Exquisite Magazine. My name is Lynette, and the article is titled Different Perspective. How many of you have different perspectives? Most of us do. Not all of us think alike, so it's okay to have a different perspective. And here we go. I'm going to explain how it can happen and how it's okay. And how to navigate through it, because this is all about relationships. And in relationships, oftentimes you meet somebody who doesn't think like you. And it doesn't mean that they're wrong, doesn't mean that you're right. It just means that your perspectives are different. And that is okay. As long as you know how to navigate through the tension of understanding how it's okay to have different perspectives, because some people try to persuade you to think like they do, and that is not a good thing to do. It is okay to have a difference of opinion. Some people are very strong opinionated, and they're very passionate about their perspective, and they don't always consider the perspective of the other person, and they forget that that other person feels just as strongly as you do about your stance. Okay, so this is where this comes in, the friction, the tension. But how you wrestle through it is not trying to force someone to think like you, but to try to gain an understanding of why they think the way that they do, so that you can say, okay, I may not agree with you, but I understand how you can arrive to that position, if that's something that you can do. Like sometimes people are so far off that it's like, no, wrong. But you can still handle them with a little care. You know what I mean? It just because they have a different perspective doesn't mean that they're always wrong. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. But here I'm gonna go to the article because my video isn't that. When I post it, it will say it's too long, so I won't have to chop all of this out. I want it all in there. It's unedited, so I want to give it to you raw and real and in real time. So as we engage different perspective, as we engage in any type of relationship, we are faced with the challenge of learning how to understand the communication styles of others, as well as how we understand their thinking process in an effort to better understand the person that we encounter. There are times when we can be so strong in our stance on how and what we think and believe that we do not consider a different perspective. We have to understand that when someone does not think or process information in the same way that we do, it is important to not be reactive to what the other person is trying to communicate. Oftentimes, if we don't agree with somebody, we want to jump in right away and with our rebuttal, with our defense response, instead of just listening, hearing them out, and saying, okay, I respect your position. Now here's mine. And then they can say, I respect your position even though I don't agree with it. You know what I mean? But you're just as entitled to your opinion, just like I am entitled to mine. And then you can just kind of navigate through that without debate and argument. You know what I mean? Without trying to persuade somebody to think like you do. So don't assume the meaning of what the other person is saying from your own perspective, that is, because oftentimes we think how we are, and that's not necessarily the intent of the message or the meaning behind the message that is being conveyed. So oftentimes you might hear something, and because of how you process information, or because of how you are, you automatically assume that that is what the person's meaning of their message is. And you're probably like, huh, what are you talking about? But I'll give you an example. So if I say I'm going down the street, something basic. If I say I'm going down the street to the store, and the way you process information is saying I'm going up the street to, and my version is I'm going down the street because my back is towards where I'm going. I mean, the front of me is where I'm going, and the back of me is walking away from you where you are. Then some people will look at that as you're going up the street. Some people will look at it as you're going down the street. Does it mean that you're right, they're wrong, they're right, you're wrong? No, it's just a different perspective. That's what I'm talking about. That's the point that I'm trying to get to. So oftentimes we do those things from our own viewpoint, our own understanding, and how we are, instead of assuming the meaning of what someone is trying to say. Ask questions. I say that consistently in these articles. Ask questions for clarity. Or ask the person. So what I am hearing you say is XYZ, whatever that thing is that they're saying. Repeat back your understanding of what you think they're saying. So this will allow the person the time to say, well, no, what I am trying to say is this. Or yes, you're spot on. That is exactly what I'm trying to say. That way you know you're not misinterpreting information. And you can respond accordingly. If you state how you interpreted their message, it allows them to give you feedback on what it is that you're thinking about the message. Excuse me. It's extremely late and I'm parched, so my voice is like going. So I'm gonna veer back. So doing so will give the other person an opportunity that you're communicating with to provide you with the clarity and inform you of what their true meaning of their message is, so that you don't have to guess or assume. So it's good to get a different perspective on your thoughts and ideas, especially regarding a male female relationship. Because, as they say, women are from Mars, men are from Venus. Oftentimes we can be saying the same exact thing, but in two different ways. And we'll argue our stance until we figure out, wait, that's what I said. That's exactly what I meant by what I said. And then that person like, well, no, you said this. But it's like, okay, I said this, but you interpreted what I said to mean something that I didn't mean. But we're basically saying the same thing. We're arguing because you thought I was saying something different. Than what you were saying. So it gets deep. I'm trying to keep it surface level, but it gets deep. I'm pretty sure in your relationships you've had that conversation where it's like, well, I think this way, and this person is saying, well, I think this way, and then you wrestle it through, and then it's like, that's what I said, and then you're like, no, that's not what you said. Y'all heard the argument, I'm pretty sure, so I'm not going to reenact it for you. But then in the end, you realize we were both saying the same thing, but just in different ways, different perspective. So oftentimes when you approach your relationship, you think, well, this is the way that I've always done things, or this is the way that I've always said things, or this is the way that I think. Okay, well, that's good and dandy, but you're not the other person, and the other person is not you. So be gracious and be compassionate and be thoughtful enough to say, your opinion is just as important as mine, and I value what you have to say too. So, or also, whatever way you want to slice the pie, meaning it's still the same. Get it? Got it? Good. Okay. Now, what I'm saying is, like, when you're a child, the child might be saying something versus an adult. Their perspectives on the same topic and idea could be different, but it doesn't mean that either one is wrong. It's just different. So again, it's okay to have a different perspective. I was having a conversation with a guy not too long ago, talking about another gentleman, and he was like, well, and I was sharing my perspective and my point of views and my thought process and how I wanted to approach this person. And he was like, well, have you ever thought about his position and his stance, and how, you know how the book says, act like a lady, think like a man? Well, there's some truth to that, because sometimes you do have to think how you think the other person might respond to what it is that you want to communicate, what you want to communicate to them. So it's like, okay, when you look at it from both sides, it kind of gives you a better perspective on how to best communicate with this person to get the outcome that you are really trying to get. So it's important, because you often say, well, I'm gonna say it the way I've been saying it, I'm gonna say it the way I always said it. Don't matter how they interpret the information. Well, it does matter. And you know why? Because the outcome is what you care about. So you want to get the best outcome from the situation. And the only way to do that is to learn how to communicate better, even when you have a different perspective. You have to consider the other person. Consider the other person. That's important. So this process is important, because we do not all process information the same way. And we do not always have an understanding of what some words mean. You know, some people just, their vocabulary is not as big as yours might be, so they might be like, huh, what are you talking about? So having a different perspective does not mean that what you think or believe is wrong or right. It is just different. It's just different. So sometimes we have to think differently. Sometimes we have to think outside of the box. That is important. So even the Bible states, lean not to your own understanding. So our understanding is usually based on our perception, and how our perception is based, and our perception, I should say, our perception is based on our own personal life experiences. So we got to realize that this person hasn't been through the same life experience that I have. And if they have, they might not be impacted in the same way that I am, which leads me to my perspective. So their perspective might be different if they have a different life experience. So because most of us do not have the same life experiences, nor do we handle those experiences in the same way, it is important that we do not assume that someone else should interpret and process information the same way that we do. It's critical. So information can be misinterpreted based on how we perceive and process information, and how we communicate that information. So we do not always understand. I'll say this: when you do not always understand someone, it is a learning and teachable moment that will help you and them to pay more attention to understanding where the breakdown in communication is, where it came from, so you can work together to get a better understanding of each other's thought process. So that's when you come to a moment where you're in disagreement about a difference of perspectives. It's a teachable moment. It's a moment to learn more about how to best communicate your thoughts and ideas to that particular person, because everybody's different. So it's a lot of work, but it's worth it in the end, because it will save you headache, heartache, and arguments when you learn how to communicate better. So getting another person's point of view can help you become more understanding and empathetic. Even if we do not want to admit it, men and women process and understand information in different ways. The communication styles of men might be viewed differently than the communication style of a woman. Men are said to be short and to the point. You know, as God said, and it was good. You know, we talk about, oh, and the trees and the flowers and everything, and we're more detailed oriented, where men are more straightforward and to the point, and they get a little bit more frustrated when you don't understand what it is that they're trying to communicate. While women, we're more elaborative and long-winded, and men usually have a short attention span when trying to communicate. So they're like, just get to the point, But and then you're like, no, I want to share, I want to talk, and I want to say everything. And they're like, okay, well, if you don't want to tune me out, if you want me to still pay attention to you, then you have to communicate with me in a way that I'm more receptive to listening. And ask questions, because how do you communicate? How would you like me to phrase what I'm trying to say? And what I'm trying to say is, stick to that meaning. So of course, what I'm saying right now does not apply to all men, all women. I do not like to generalize because we're all different. However, the point is that each person that you meet could have a different perspective on any situation that you are facing right now. So take in the feedback that you find useful that I'm giving you right now, and then discard the useless information. The things that you can use, the things that you can't use, throw them out. But know that just because someone has a different perspective than you do does not make their perspective wrong. So you shouldn't get frustrated when people ask you questions for clarity. You should not get frustrated and cause an argument over things that the person is trying to communicate if they don't understand. Asking for clarity is the only way to get to a deeper understanding, which leads to better communication. So you have to know this. This is extremely important to relationships. You can learn how to better communicate with one another through different perspectives, through those different perspectives. So it is okay to have a different perspective. It can teach you a lot about yourself and how you handle people who don't think like you do, as well as it could also help you learn a new way of thinking and processing information, as well as growing personally. Because we don't always get it right, we don't always do what's right, we don't always think the best way. So it helps us to learn how to do that. So we need to learn how to get along even in our disagreements with one another. I'm going to say that again. We need to learn how to get along even in our disagreements with one another. Men and women need to learn how to coexist in a world that is already cruel enough. I'm going to say that again. Men and women, you and me, you and I, we need to learn how to get along in a world that is already so cruel. You get beat up by the world. You get beat up by the trials and tribulations of life. Where do you find your peace? Where do you find your solace? Where do you find your tranquility when you can't find it in your mate? Put a pin in that. This is why it's okay to have a difference of perspective without arguing your point. Communicate. Communicate instead of arguing, instead of debating. Have an effective communication strategy in place where you can be heard and you can ask questions for clarity so you can be understood as well. Learn how to communicate better with one another and treat each other in a much better way. Treat each other with the same respect that you expect. Treat your mate with the same respect that you expect from them, even when you have a difference of perspective. Different perspective is in the For the Love of Relationships section of the Love Exquisite Magazine, which you can access online for free at loveexquisitellc.com. Thank you for listening. And even if you have a different perspective than the one I just spoke of, like if everything I said you like, no, she wrong, no, she should have said it this way, it's my opinion, it's my perspective, and it's okay if we don't agree on everything. We won't agree on everything. That is okay. But that doesn't make what I'm saying wrong. Doesn't make what you're saying wrong either. It's just different. Take that with you.